Alright, so this time I'm going to review what I've done so far since I have been gone for a week. I was repairing trails in the Alps nearby, so I did not have time nor the means to work on this project. So, let's make our little spacecraft. There's our engines. We have our fuel tanks. Now I'm going to work on adding a map. So, for this, I do have a separate file that I always go back to, and I always wind up removing what's ever there. I'm going to change the background to be very dark, maybe a little bit darker than that. And this is where I'm going to build the map object. Now, I have an idea of what I want to do for a map object, and I can also use this simple map object, to pretty easily program a bot that can race as well. Now, I'm going to make this bot pretty simple, and it's just going to basically follow the edge as close as possible without getting too close to it. And the bot will try to be a show of what an almost perfect score can look like, and maybe I'll add an achievement that will give the player some kind of reward if they actually beat the bot's time. But for now, I'm just going to make the map object and try and keep it simple, make it look like a giant asteroid, and try to keep the edges, try to keep it from having huge edges where, or huge concave areas where the bot can get confused, and instead of just crossing the gap, it will just go through it. There probably will be some small ones, but I'm gonna try and keep them small. So, let's add a group. And so far, I'm undecided as to whether I want a set object that's the same every time the player opens the game, or maybe have it be slightly different every time the player opens the game. But for now, I'm just going to go with the set one, and I'm going to compromise it and do the outside edge, where if the player starts getting too far from the asteroid, that will be randomly generated every time. So it will deter the player from going into this unfamiliar area. So, let's start with a basic oval. This will be the basis of our map design. And let's just give it a fill of silver. Make it look kind of like a rock. On this page, we can tell silver is RGB 192 all the way across. So I'm going to change that a bit and make it look a little more brown, a little more earthy. 195 and 190. That should give it a little bit more of a yellowish tint, like so. I'm going to darken that a little bit more. Sometimes I'll go in this process and be darkening it or adjusting colors quite a few times before I find the color that I actually want to use. Alright, so that is the base oval. I want the start line to be somewhere over here on the rightmost edge. And the player will go counterclockwise, just like NASCAR does, just like track does, because that's what I'm familiar with for racing events. Now let's add a smaller oval that'll be right about 290, 200, and I'm gonna make it only 20 across. That's gonna be 100 tall. Fill equals silver, so I can tell it apart from the original shape. And that looks about the same. I'm not really satisfied with that, so I'm gonna make it a little bit taller. And that is looking pretty good. Now, the reason I'm making this shape is I want it to be a sort of straight stretch where the player, I'm going to add stuff over here that'll uh, tempts the player to try and make straighter or more curved approaches. But over here, it's going to be a straight stretch where the player with an all-out speed design will succeed better than a player that has a heavy design like the one I just made a minute ago to test where I was. Now, these corners are going to be an area where the player with heavier builds will shine because they're going to be on the fuel a lot more than in the straights here, or than sorry, a lightweight build will, because they can't change the direction as much, and they also need to change the direction a lot, which with how much velocity the player will have built up here, the lightweight builds might not have the fuel to make this corner. So I'm going to add another little oval. The shape is going to be mostly built out of ovals. I might add some other shapes, but I'm going to try and mostly build out of ovals. So let's see, right here is going to be x270, y90. And I'm going to make this 50 by 75, fill equals silver. Make this the same RGB value. Once I plug this into the actual game, I might make it so that it's slightly different every time. Every shape will be a little bit of a different color. And this will encourage, well, this will make it look a little more different every time, a little more natural. Let's lower this down by 10 pixels. That's looking good. I might lower it down by another 5, and that's looking better. So as I said, the bot, I don't want to have too many concave areas like this, but this one is so small that the bot, by the time it gets to here, its checking area will have already hit this, and it'll be turning around to go around here. So the small ones might not be much of an issue. So let's set this to the normal color of RGB 200, 190, 180, and add another oval. I might actually rotate this by about -10 degrees, because it would look a little bit weird if they're all facing the same direction. Now, right about here is where I want the next one to be. So 240, 80, and let's just go 50, 40. Give it a fill of silver. Whoops. What happened? Forgot to add the equal sign over there. And that's an alright position, but it could be better. Everything could be better, and we will make it better. There we go. That's looking about how I want it. RGB 200, 190, and 180. Now I'm going to add another shape right about here to fill in this concave area. It's not going to be a massive one, but right about 240, 60. And it's going to be 50 pixels wide, probably only about 10 tall. Give it a fill of silver. And let's give it a rotate angle of 5 degrees. Perfect. That is looking how I want it to. And let's give that RGB of 200, 190, 180. Now, this protruding corner here, I might just leave that and make it one smooth corner until right about here, where I'm going to add another bump, and it's going to go into another straight section that'll end about here. So 110, 110. That's what I'm going to start with. width of about 30 pixels and a height of about 50. Give it a fill of, let's just go darker, shorter than type 2, gray. Now, with the gray, we can see it a little bit better. And it's shorter type, so we'll save time slightly. Give it a rotate angle of 20 degrees. I don't want this to be protruding out too much. Now that's looking good, but I want to fill in this concave area. I might actually move that to the left about 5 pixels, like so. Now, give it the regular fill of RGB 200, 190, and 180. And let's get to the next shape, which is going to fill in this area, which is right about 140 and 80. Let's give it a width of 50 and a height of 40. Fill equals gray. That might be a bit too much. Let's lower this to 45. Now, back up to 50. And let's move it down 10 pixels. There we go. Maybe give it a rotate angle of -5 degrees. -10 degrees. And move it up 5 pixels. Now, move it back down 5 pixels. I'm going to move it back up and give it the old rotate angle. And we'll just add another tiny shape right here to fill in that gap. This corner's not turning out as smooth as I want to, so I might just rule this out, make it a little bit more of a straight stretch here. This corner's tight enough. This corner is going to be a little bit of an easier one, and then have a smooth corner somewhere on the south end of the asteroid. I gotta give this the old RGB 200, 190, 180. And then we'll add another shape right about here. Well, let me desensitize the mouse a bit. Right about here. 150, 70. Be about 30 pixels wide, 10 pixels tall, with a fill of gray. Alright. Give it a rotate angle of -10 degrees. Move it over 5 pixels and up and no, down 5. Increase the width. That is looking better. Now let's make that blend in. RGB 200, 190, 180. Now it's looking kind of like a balding potato man. We're gonna add another shape down here to fill in this concave area. 100, 150, width of 20, and a height of 60. Fill equals gray. Over. Oop. Move it over about 5 pixels. And give a rotate angle of -5 degrees. degrees. There we go. That is looking like a smooth corner, actually. Give this the RGB of the other asteroid pieces of 200, 190, and 180. Alright, I had to go check something momentarily, but I am back. Now, I'm going to add a shape here to throw off the player a bit. Have them not get used to being just going in a straight line. I'm going to add a bit of an outward section here. So I'm going to start right about here, 100 to 90, with a width of 60 and a height of 50, and of course, the fill of gray. Now I do actually want it to be a little bit taller now that I see it. And move this over about 10 pixels. Perfect. Well, not quite. Nothing is perfect, but we'll get it as good as we can. Now, give that the RGB of 200, 190, and 180. And let's add a little rock up here that'll smooth out that bump. I do want it to be jarring, but I don't want it to be enough to confuse the bot that I will later add to the game. Let's give this a width of 30, a height of 50, a fill of gray, and a rotate angle of about 20 degrees. Now that is looking good. Let's move this over a bit. And let's give it a more of a height so it's a little more straight. There we go. Now give this the blend in of 200, 190, and 180. I sound like a broken record, but that's all right. Now I'm going to add another jarring oval over here at 130 and 330. Now I know this is not going to be completely centered on the page, and that's all right because going to set it so that when the player resets their ship or starts the game, it'll automatically calculate where the map should be. And if I'm going to make it recalculate every time, if I'm up to it at the time that I wind up looking into it, I might actually make it so the player can select multiple maps. I might expand that race button into a few race buttons since that side of the page is empty, and make those race buttons different map options. So let's give this a height of 50 and or a width of 50 and a height of 40. The fill of gray. Let's see how that looks. That looks good. It's about right where I want it. So let's give it the RGB of 200, 190, and 180. Now, the oval that is going to fill in here will be at about 105, 320. Let's give it a width of 50 and a height of 20. Fill equals gray, and a rotation angle of about 50 degrees. There we go. Now that won't be too much of a concave to confuse the bot, but this certainly will. So let's add the first different shape of a rectangle. Base it at 130, 330, and give it a width about 50, a height of about 20. Give it the fill of gray. Give it a width of 60 instead. That'll extend it a little bit farther. To about there. Looking good. I'll say so myself. The RGB of 200, 190, 180. Now, let's give it the second different shape. Well, I guess we could write it as an oval, because that'll can make the same thing. And center it at 200, 350. Well, let's make it 345. And give it an even side, or even proportions. Setting it there might make it a little bit wider, so it's not as jarring for the bot. And move this up by 5 pixels. Might also help. Good, so the player would be coming along here. But they can't just go straight. There'll be a small little bump there. Now give this RGB of 200, 190, 180. And that is looking good for a starter map. I may come back to this as I find that the map does not really work, although I do want to I want to fill in that gap. I just noticed that. I will probably be coming back to this map time after time to fix some things or to make variations of it. So 285, 275, give it a width of 10 and a height of 30. Give it the fill of gray and a rotate angle of about 30 degrees. I sound like I run a museum. Move it down by 1 pixel. Perfect. As I said, nothing is perfect. Let's give the RGB of 200, 190, and 180. And we will roll with that for now. Go back to Space Racers. And I want it to be back here, and we will put it in the base here. I'm gonna have to change it different, make it a different name. Let's name it the asteroid main, because that's what it is. And this is gonna be a little bit goofy, but it's gonna just be a big circle that we kind of, right, I didn't add it. All right, asteroid main. Right now, it's just kind of gonna be a goofy circle that we can float through. Doesn't really do much other than just look weird. But now that I'm seeing this in coordination with the background, I'm going to add some randomly generated effects on it that'll look like asteroid impacts. Since this is such a big asteroid, I'm sure it's pulling other little asteroids in. When we fly over it, you can kind of see the jet a little bit better. It looks weird on this background, but otherwise it looks fine. Now, the jets, I might actually make them closer. Give it a minute. It's been a week since, it's been a week or two since I've been able to look at this. The engine. Oh yeah, this is the whole thing. All right. Move that up by about 2.5 pixels. All right, now it looks like it properly connects with the engine. Now, to make the map hilariously big, so that it actually is a track that you will need to navigate rather than just being this little circle. Asteroid main width times equals 100. And we'll do the same for its height. And give it a center Y of 200 pixels. And its rightmost edge will be at 100 pixels on the x-axis. Whoa! I'm not quite sure what just happened there. It's probably because this is not big enough. Let's try this now. Still no. I don't want to make it too big because it could start lagging the game. Uh, just from its massive size. And that's already concerning. I'm just gonna make this a little bit smaller, maybe about 50, because that was looking pretty big. No, something's wrong with the left corner, I think. No, wait. Where is? All right, it's close enough. It's just something's really weird going on here. That's why it's wobbling. I don't want it to wobble. This is the death wobble that I commonly find when I'm using this kind of movement system. It started when I was making the time traveling game, and it's been present ever since, and I don't know why. Because right here it sets it anyways. So then Y, whoops, Y is going out to Narnia. I might make this apply twice. Once before and once after when it calculates movement. This might help the death wobble from becoming so prevalent, but there is no promises. Alright, it's fixed the death wobble. Now we're stranded inside the asteroid. Alright, so the player will be following this. Yeah, this is going to be an interesting track. I'm pretty satisfied with its reset. Let's make a heavier build so that we go a little bit slower. I think it does have 3 tanks and 1 engine. Yeah, they won't have to worry about fuel at all. Which I guess is alright. It's a heavyweight build. They're gonna need all the fuel they can get. Let's see, gonna have to reverse this. Well, not really reverse it, but make it calculate the stars and the asteroid and then just make the map the center because that's what's happening is it's the map moving off to the side and that's why it's spinning. The death wobble wasn't visible there, but it is still happening. And that is going to bother me. At rotate angle will be fine. It should be fine. Stars in the asteroid will move, but the map will stay centered. Asteroid main is what we need. Perfect. No more death wobble as far as I can tell. Right, so this leftmost edge is 95. Great. I'm gonna need to move the because that is at 100. I'm gonna have to move it over by about 5 pixels so that the widest jet possible is currently grid view. Currently, if you were to stick your tanks out all the way over here, which you technically could go even further to here. Yeah, you can't do it there. That might result. Right, it'll center. Actually, that might work if it's centered like that. Because it should not be able to reach the edges. Alright. Why don't we make this a flying V, just for the fun of it? What is it? Okay. Why? Did I forget to change one of those hitboxes? What is this? It's one of the jets. Yeah, that's gonna touch. On key release, I believe. Alright, I'm gonna fix this, and we're over time, so A rocket BH. Yeah, I forgot to change that. Alright, rocket AH. Rocket AH. H. Rocket AH. Rocket BH. Rocket AH. Tank CH. Now, you should not be able to pull off that trick again. Alright, yeah, you can't pull off that trick again. Now I have a really wonky jet. Let's see, if the player makes a wonky jet like that, would actually, I believe it would be balanced. No. Yeah, it would be balanced, wouldn't it? Except the way my weight distribution works. Yes, that edge is there, so it's might looking a little bit weird, because this is heavy. This is actually balanced in the game, in the game's logic. Alright, that is going to be it for this week.